I'm doing the welcome right now. I'll touch a little bit on the parts that Stephanie was going to do on our mission, vision, and going a little too fast. We'll spend quite a bit of time on our strategic plan and the work that we're doing that really is encapsulated, that drives kind of all the learning experiences we call equity through deeper learning, and Deidre will do that. We'll do a finance update with Caitlin. I'll do some at length conversation about our facility planning, and that's a big project that we actually started during the time of COVID. And we'll have some time to answer questions at the end. We're hoping to have about 10-15 minutes to respond to any questions. So that's what we're here to do today. What we're not here to do is, if there are questions related to really individual or personal matters, and we've learned this over the years that some people want to ask these questions, but we're in a public forum. And so if those questions come up, we may defer those to one of our directors or another leader to help respond to that, but we're not responding to those in the public space. We just want to be clear of what our focus is, and we're going to move forward from there. We just wanted to touch on, we're doing this in Zoom, right? And the last years, we always did it face-to-face, and we had much better turnout in face-to-face, and this is probably as much as we expected tonight, but that's why we're recording, so we can share it further. But just to touch on how we've worked through the year of a health emergency, we focused on these 4 guiding principles. So safety and well-being, learning that works for all, and that's been a challenge for us. Being responsive and flexible to the various needs of families, students, and our employees, and then to have a plan that we can implement that's practical. And just this week, we've arrived at 5 full days for elementary and 4 for our secondary students, and so far it's going well. I think we've made smart, strategic, not easy choices, and we're moving forward from there. So in terms of our mission and vision, 2 years ago now, not quite 2 years, we revised or refreshed our strategic plan, and we've been doing really good work in the last 6 years. And we started with the strategic plan 6 years ago, and about 3 years in, our board said, we're making really good progress. We've met most of the goals. So let's revisit the plan, refresh it, and get another set of 5-year goals out in front of us. And we thought that was a pretty exciting request to get from a board that starts to feel we're making progress. And with the refresh, we took the opportunity to revisit mission and vision language and make sure that the words that really drive the organization are the right words that align to the work we've been doing. Right, so in the mission, the words you're going to see that really are the alignment words are equity through deeper learning, and we'll talk quite a bit about that. Fostering a sense of belonging, which is critical in our schools and in our classrooms, and educating the whole child, right? And in the vision statement, we're aspiring to create experience that build community and empower learners, right? So again, that community, that sense of belonging, empowering learners, and you're going to hear from some of our students this evening in the way that they've been empowered to really own their own experiences and their progress in our schools. And with the ultimate goal that we want to prepare kids to live life on their own terms. And that idea is also a statement about equity, that it's our job to make sure every door remains open for every kid. And regardless of where they come from or the experiences they've had, our job is to make sure that they have all the choices available. And that's how we measure our success. Our students or graduates ready to live life on their own terms. So a little bit about who are the students, and our demographics have been changing. You'll see we are now more students of color than white students. And we think that is something to celebrate. We love this demographic profile. We think we're probably one of the most truly diverse school districts in southeastern Wisconsin, given the makeup of who we serve. But it also calls us more and more into the work of equity, right? You'll also see that we serve a growing number of students with disabilities, English language learners, and the students that are qualified for free reduced lunch or are economically disadvantaged has also been growing, right? So we've hovered in the 50% and now we're above 60%. And the number of homeless students we serve continues to grow as well. So a little bit about where our schools are located. So we have 11 elementary, 3 intermediate, and 4 high schools. So 2 are large comprehensive high schools, and Dodke, which was formerly our alternative school, is now a true project-based learning high school. And then we have Shared Journeys, which is a small charter school serving parenting teens. And we're in a number of locations. 15 of our schools are in West Allis, 2 in West Milwaukee and 1 in New Berlin. Sometimes that's a surprise to people that we actually serve students that live in New Berlin and in Greenfield. And so we represent 4 different municipalities in our school district. So a little bit about our strategic plan. And I mentioned that we've done a refresh in it. One of the things we're really proud of, and that I insisted when we developed a plan, is that it is a plan that is tight. It is short, it is concise, it keeps our focus drawn to the most important work. And when I say it's short, I mean it fits on one piece of paper, right? It's front and back, but it is one piece of paper. The strategic plan has 4 building blocks. These are the building blocks that we're committed to improve through our plan. And so you'll learn a little bit more about these as we go forward, but they're success in life through college and career readiness, right? So our college and career readiness is important, but success in life on their own terms is really the foundation of the work. Then one more back.
Sorry.
That's all right.
There we go.
Yep. We focus on employee engagement and culture, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're engaging employees through a compensation committee that we're working on to retain teachers, and then also in our facility planning process. We're also engaging our community in our facility planning process. And then Caitlin will talk quite a bit about how we've now achieved financial stability and continue to work on efficiencies. So with that, I will turn this over to take us deeper into the equity through deeper learning work. I will turn that over to Deidre.
Good evening, everyone. As Marty said, I am Deidre Raymer, and I have the honor of serving as the Director of Leadership and Learning for our West Allis-West Milwaukee school community. And it's part of my role in our school district. I get the opportunity to oversee all of curriculum and instruction, student services and special ed, our principal coaching, and some of our teacher professional development. And in that role, one of my jobs is to ensure that we are creating pathways to equitable opportunities for all students, for every single one of our learners, through the deeper learning competencies. And we're going to show a video in a second that explains those in a moment. But as part of that refresh of our strategic plan, we also took a long, hard look at our belief statements. And the ones that we had before were perfectly fine. They were kind of standard to what most school districts have, but we really wanted to start making some very strong statements around our beliefs around equity, that every single one of our learners and our families and our teachers should feel seen and heard when they are in our schools and in our community, and that we are doing things to make sure that every single learner has whatever opportunity they need to be ready to live life on their own terms when they graduate. As part of that work, we started doing a series of videos, and the videos are to help the greater community understand a little bit more around the work we're doing around equity. So we're just going to show a short clip of this one tonight.
So the driving goal behind all of the work we do in our West Allis-West Milwaukee School District is to provide equitable learning opportunities for all of our students to ensure they are prepared to live life on their own terms when they graduate. So as a district, we have developed equity non-negotiables as our belief statements that focus on building upon our learners' strengths by embedding the deeper learning competencies into every classroom. And this work is important, but this work is also hard. It's human work. It's important to remember that we don't have all the answers and no one is perfect. The goal of this series is not to be a monologue, but rather to have honest discussions from which we can learn. In talking across differences, ourselves and our communities have the opportunity to grow, have the opportunity to be challenged, and understand more fully the experience of others. That's the power of conversation. While dialogue alone does not solve structural problems, it is a good place to start. So Margaret Wheatley, she's a leading leadership theorist, says it like this: "We do not fear people whose stories we know." So we continue our equity journey by sharing our stories and dismissing fear.
For you and your pathway. And I think that's the big difference. A lot of trying to make the work the same tends to come from outcomes, and really it's about the opportunities. So right at the start, do we have the belief in every single learner as they walk through our doors that they'll get there, even if they need additional scaffolds or more time or other supports in order to achieve the goals that they're looking to do when they're ready to graduate from school.
Right. So, and not assuming sameness, right? And appreciating difference.
Yeah, and just recognizing that all of our learners, we serve a beautifully diverse community. So we serve an economically diverse community, we serve a politically diverse community, we serve a racially diverse community. And so those experiences that you have in life outside of school do contribute to who you are and how you learn. And how do you recognize those and then create space in those in every classroom so that we can recognize your individuality, we can recognize the story you bring to the table and where that adds value to what you're trying to do next. And then help our learners realize that just because somebody's experience in the classroom was different than yours, that's not a right or wrong, that's just a difference. And how do we make space to hear every single voice in that classroom and show our learners that we have that belief that they've got this and they can do this? And how do we support them through that work right from the start?
The overarching goal for all the work we do in our school district is equity through deeper learning. How did we arrive at that point that was the overarching goal for all of the work that we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so lots of that came from our superintendent, Dr. Marty Lexman, who had been doing work in innovation, school innovation for many, many years before he came to West Allis-West Milwaukee, and is a huge champion of equitable opportunities for all learners. So some of that work came from him, and it came from really researching where are there schools across our nation, or who is doing the work that creates outcomes that allow every student to live life on their own terms. And then what are they focusing their learning or the structure of their learning around? And really paying attention to the national graduation rate from college being as low as it is in 4 years. And what are employers looking for and the skills that students need to have when they leave school and they're ready to go out and do their next thing. And that drove us to the deeper learning competencies. So there are 6 of them. They're content mastery, because school still is about learning how to do things that go beyond a Google search. Our kids know a lot of surface knowledge these days with their access to technology, but those deep levels of knowledge and applying that knowledge is super important in our work. But then they also need to know collaboration and communication and problem solving skills and being self-directed. The most important one to us of the competencies really is the academic mindset. So that's where students feel that sense of belonging so that they want to work hard. So they see their value and their place in that classroom so that they're ready to go out and accomplish their goals. And there are several other districts in the nation that use the deeper learning competencies as their guide and as their framework. And the outcomes they're producing are different than the outcomes that typical traditional school produces. So that was kind of where we started with the work. And then it was really important to us as part of our strategic plan to say that's the framework. So that's the overarching work that we do as a school district. But then there are lots of things that are building-based decisions and classroom-based decisions, because the school knows the community of teachers they serve, the community of learners they serve, the community of families they serve, and the classroom teacher knows the individuals walking through the door each day. So that's the overarching frame. And then what that means to each school site and each classroom are things that they get to determine at those sites.
So knowing that the deeper learning competency, the academic mindset is really what we're focused on. Why is that?
Yeah, so that's the 6 competencies are equally important in the work that we do, but the academic mindset is the one we've really spent a lot of time on. We know that there is a rapid increase in the number of students who have mental health concerns across the nation. We know there are people, especially given this year and some of what we've been through together, that are isolated from some of the things we've gone through. And we had to normalize that. Like, there was a place for you, regardless of where your background has brought you today, whether you've come from a background of economic disadvantage, if you've been a household that's experienced a lot of trauma, if you're a student who's headed towards advanced placement classes and wants to go on to go to an Ivy League college, right? There's different pressures that come with that. And they all make up a huge part of who we are as people and the identity that we bring into the classroom each day. So how do we, as the educators who work with young people every day, explore our own identities so that we know what informs our practice? Why do we do the things that we do? And then make some space for children to explore that in classrooms as well. And
So the driving
So
goal.
we are going to jump ahead after that moment and share a little bit. We talked in the video about how we have this overarching frame, which is equity through deeper learning. And there's a visual there that tells a little bit more about the competencies, the 6 competencies. But the people who tell that story way better than any of the adults are typically our students and our teachers who get to do this work every day. The equity video that we just watched, there's more to that one. Those are located right on our website. If anybody wants to go back and watch the rest of that one, it's a 2-part series to get us kicked off. And then there'll be several other videos going out throughout the course of the year that just helps our learning community, our broader community, understand the work that we're doing in our schools. But to start us off tonight in some of our roundtable sharing, we're going to invite the team from Pershing Elementary. So Miss Halverson is here.
Hello.
There she is. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
And Kelly's going to introduce the students that she's brought with her tonight.
Yes. So I will share my screen. We have some visuals to go along. So my name is Kelly Holtz. I am the proud teacher of Holtz House. We are a 4th and 5th grade classroom community at Pershing Elementary. And as we transitioned to virtual learning, we found that our community was really struggling with engagement. And in Holtz House, this led us to reimagine how was I teaching and how were my students learning. And this really led us to dive deeply into our project-based learning work. So I have today with me 2 fabulous ladies from Holtz House. I have Alicia and I have Lexi, and they're going to be sharing with you some of the work that we've done this year and why they feel that this has really helped engage them as learners. So we'll just start off with the ladies talking about what does deeper learning mean to you? So Lexi, you can start us off.
Deeper learning means to me that I'm going to go to school and have a fun project to do while I'm still expanding my knowledge.
And Alicia.
Deeper learning means my learning is connected across different parts of my day. I also get to practice my communication, so I'm not nervous speaking in public.
Yes, and she's doing a fabulous job today with that. So then the ladies are going to share with us what have they accomplished this year that they are most proud of. So Lexi, you can start us off.
So I chose the name tag project, and the name tag project is we did a name tag, and then we used critiques that we were given to making it improve, and we made multiple revisions of that name tag and made it improve, I guess. And
Lexi, can I ask you a question on your name tag project? How did you know what needed to be improved about your project?
So we had a chance to go around the room and critique others' projects, and so I used the critiques that I was given to make it improve, like I've been saying. And so the reason I'm most proud of it is the name tag project gave me a chance to express my personality and my creativity.
Okay. And Alicia is going to be sharing with us about another project we did.
I am most proud of my Passport Around the World project, and what the Passport Around the World project was, we picked a specific country, which I chose Japan, and we did research on we did tons of research on the project, and then we planned our videos, and then we created them, and then we got critiques from someone, and we used those critiques to help us make our videos better. And also this project helped me learn the similarities and differences between a country and how not every single country is the same.
And then the final question that we have for our ladies is, what is one way that you feel an academic mindset in our classroom? And Lexi, you can start us off.
One way I feel an academic mindset in my classroom is I know that I'm going to get a good grade, and I believe in myself, and I know it's okay to make mistakes.
And Alicia?
And for me, I definitely think that critiques helped me a lot in my classroom, and I know that I'm going to get multiple chances to make my best work.
All right. And that's what we had at Pershing Elementary to share.
Thank you very much, Ms. Holtz. I always get the name confused because on our email, Kelly is still Halverson.
Yes.
Yes, so it always mixes us up. But Alicia and Lexi, one question for the two of you. First of all, what grade are you in? And how hard was it for you to come in front of a room full of adults and strangers and talk about school?
We're both. I'm in 5th grade, and Lexi's also 5th grade.
Yeah, like I said, I'm in 5th grade. It's not really that hard because I've done big presentations before.
That's excellent. And that's a big part. Excellent job. That's a big part of our deeper learning work, right? Is you have a lot of opportunity to present who you are and present what you know to the greater community and then get feedback on it. And you guys did an amazing job. Thank you so much for that. And so now we're going to move on to our team from Lane Intermediate, and we'll pass the floor over to Sarah and Susan.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my slides too. That is not what I wanted. There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Acuff, and I'm here with my teammate, Susan Heermans. We teach 8th grade at Lane Intermediate. For us, this question of what does deeper learning mean to us? As a team, we know that deeper learning is a unique way of learning that teaches and supports the whole entire student. This way of learning is equitable to all students. It creates lifelong learners, as all of these competencies are skills that students need as they complete their schooling and beyond our district. It also encourages the application of curriculum that then makes learning engaging for each of our students. As a staff this year, we specifically have chosen to focus our attention on effective communication and critical thinking and problem solving the most, while still creating those opportunities, of course, for our students to work on the others as well. And we created rubrics as a staff to kind of encourage all, no matter what they teach, to still continue to build on those skills with our students, which is actually what we decided to focus on in our classroom with our PBL unit that we are actually going to talk about next.
So one unit that we had created to help our students engage in problem solving and communicating their learning was our Westward Expansion unit. Students were completing this during virtual learning and hybrid learning, which created an extra challenge, but kept us moving on our learning. And they worked on this in multiple subject areas, as you can see on the screen. Students were able to synthesize the information that they learned in their classes into a town that they created. The example that we're going to show part of to you is from a student named Creed, and he was able to make his town on Minecraft, whereas other students could choose to use recycled materials or to hand draw their town just based on what they had available to them during virtual learning.
All right, so this is my town. I didn't name it. But yeah, no, this is just my town. We got a small little town here. So I'll give you a quick tour. So starting, you got their living conditions, which are these tents. You know, you got these tents. You know, have some nice beds in here. You know, the olive drab. We have got some tents. This is what they sleep in most of the night.
All right, so with this, they also got the opportunity in science to continue their learning and exploration with this westward expansion, especially when talking about the importance of transportation. So in science, we decided to, as students that they learned about the railroad, we brought in a challenge for them as we transitioned into hybrid learning to create a vehicle a car. And it was so really exciting to kind of have them demonstrate those problem solving skills and collaboration and also explore their creativity. It was really, really fun to see the variety. These are just some pictures of them, but to show their creativity and individuality when doing this fun project that encouraged them to kind of explore and get a little comfortable with each other. We started coming together as a group.
Another deeper learning competency that's important at Lane is to have an academic mindset. And so Lane has this PBIS matrix that supports the whole learner as we navigate what middle school is. And we carry on this purpose of the matrix into our classroom by celebrating student success and encouraging them to do their best in academics. So in our room, we have an incentive every month to encourage them to get their work done on time and just to celebrate their success and encourage them to do their best.
And kind of as you heard with everything that we talked about today, deeper learning is a part that of really everything we do at Lane, whether it's professional development with the staff, whether it's the student work, or helping to build community and relationships with each other. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much, our team from Lane. And we will one more tonight. We have a team with us from Nathan Hale. So I'll pass it over to April Ellery.
Hi, I'm April Ellery. I do not see my student's name listed in any of the black boxes, but I don't know if Jordan made it tonight. And if she didn't, that's okay. I'm prepared to go ahead. But if Jordan, you're there and I don't see you, or if you use them.
I don't see her on the, I don't see Jordan on the participant list, April.
Okay, that is okay. So we will, I'm going to share with you a project that I've done actually a couple times. I've done it with 9. This group that you'll see right here is from my class. I've done it with co-taught English 12, and it is called the Panel 61 project. So I just need to give you a little bit of background. So this whole project, this whole unit is really front loading or pre-reading for our Raisin in the Sun unit. And the purpose of it is to really give context to understanding the characters' motivations and choices in A Raisin in the Sun, which will ultimately help us to understand the themes of the work more. But it's a pretty hefty little front-loading unit that I do. So this whole front-loading unit is looked at through the lens of the Great Migration and phase 1 of the Great Migration, 1916 through 1930. And there's 3 ways that I look at that with my students. We spend some time doing nonfiction with primary source documents, which they will have had a lot of experience with in social studies. So there's kind of a cross-curricular thing going on here. We do some document-based question writing, another social studies connection. And then we move into the fiction portion where we study the poetry of the Harlem Renaissance, pretty specifically Langston Hughes, because he writes a lot about the Great Migration. And that leads us into, I think, what is the most exciting part of the project is reading non-print text. It's a skill that is not developed a whole lot looking at non-print text, which could be graphs or maps. Specifically here, it's art and photography. And we do that through looking at the Great Migration paintings series from Jacob Lawrence. And there is a museum in DC called the Phillips Collection, and they house the whole thing, the entire series of Jacob Lawrence's Great Migration. So we spent some time looking at the panels. And basically what Lawrence does here, if you're not familiar with his work, is he paints the migration of Black Americans from the South to the North. And each panel kind of has a partner panel, one in the South, one in the North. And so we spend a couple days talking about the art. You know, what do we see? What do we not see? How does Jacob Lawrence express some very specific themes like struggle, hope, optimism, sacrifice? And that leads us to the project. So the Phillips Collection sponsors what they call the Panel 61 project. And the idea behind it is Jacob Lawrence himself has painted 60 panels in the series. And what the Phillips Collection encourages is for students to create Panel 61. Okay, what do they think should come next in the series? And we take this idea in my class and we really look at it through the lens of the themes of Lawrence. So students are encouraged to tell their story, Panel 61, through any group of people who may be struggling socially. And you're going to see a lot of examples of that in a minute. They could have chosen immigrants, victims of different kinds of social violence, people with disabilities, veterans, the LGBTQ community. And I'll show you. So the Phillips Collection does provide lots of samples of student work, because once students have completed the panel, they are encouraged actually to submit their work, and the collection does show it. So this isn't my student work, although in the past I have had students submit their work and the Phillips Collection did publish it. But I don't know that my students submitted from this year because we just finished the project. So in the past, what we do with our projects is we have a museum day, we have a gallery, we have a walk. And this year, things of course were a little different. And we finished this project right when we were coming back hybrid. So I had a handful of kids in the classroom and many more at home. So on the day that we had the presentation of our work, I designed 3 different wings. Our museum itself had 3 wings. There was the Great Hall, which was the hallway. There was the classroom wing, and then we had what I call the virtual wing. Students that were actually in class that day became docents. And after they finished walking around looking at the art, they used their computers to lead their at-home partners, their at-home visitors around the 2 wings that they could access. So they became docents taking the at-home learners around to look at the art. The virtual wing then, the 3rd wing, is what was accessible to everybody through a Google slideshow in Schoology. And this, I'm doing a slideshow within a slideshow. It's very meta. So this is an example of 8th Hour's virtual wing of their art. Their art influenced by Jacob Lawrence. And they, again, got to choose how they wanted to create their art. They could do poetry, they could do paintings, they could do photography, and they could also choose what they wanted their art to be about. So I just pulled some samples for you to look at. These are all from this year. That's an example of one of the poems. And you'll notice when I'm going through the slides, they all have numbers in the bottom left-hand corner. And there's a reason for that, and I'll show you in a moment. And they all picked topics that were very personal to them. The words in black say "me too." I'm not sure if you can see that. So these were all their panels, what they thought might come next in Jacob Lawrence's story. And then we had a competition. We had 4 categories, and students voted for their particular choice for each category. So in this class, this was the winner of the In My Feelings Award, and it was given to the panel or the piece of art that kind of elicited some sort of emotion in the person who was looking at it. The New Perspectives Award went to the student who created something that made you look or think about something in a different light, gave you a new perspective about something. This belongs in the Denver Art Museum gallery. And the spirit of Jacob Lawrence. So which piece of art really kind of embodied Jacob Lawrence's like true themes and purpose in his art? And that one had a couple winners. And the last one here, this is actually Jordan's, the student who was going to join me tonight and talk about the project. Oh, I don't know if I can exit without, let's try this. Here we go. All right, so my connections to deeper learnings. Obviously, the skill base that we're working on is quite robust. We are looking at how to read nonfiction through historical documents, scholarly articles, abstract thinking, reading fiction through, in this particular lens, it was the poetry, and then also the reading of non-print text. So in the different articles and journals that we read, we looked at graphs, we looked at actual photographs, and then of course the paintings. And the students each received a set of guided questions on how it is that we look at paintings. So when we look at art, we're encouraged to look at what's there as well as what's not there, okay? Light, space, that kind of thing. And then we were looking at this particular themes because all of these things, or sorry, all of these themes transfer over into our next reading, Raisin in the Sun. So we are taking our prior knowledge and connecting it to the next thing that we read. And then of course the product of what was the most exciting thing I think for the kids was they were able to present their learning in all different ways. There was lots of writing involved before the project, and they had to include a written piece with their art. And then they were allowed to choose any other medium. They could do drawings, collages, banners. I had one student who took up one whole bulletin board and filled it with pictures and banners and homemade shirts of her activism over the summer. And another important part of the deeper learning for the product here is the balance between the non-negotiables, which was the writing, and the choice of topic and expression. So there was things that they had to do that they couldn't negotiate with me about, which was the writing portion, but then they were left to express their learning in other ways, not just the writing. It also connects to our equity work that we've been doing in the district through 2 of the social justice standards. So I really tried to empower students in creating and showing their identity and the things that were important to them, the issues that mattered to them, and hopefully that those issues would encourage others to see things differently and maybe to take action. And then again, this was Jordan's art. And we do have a display of the art in one of the trophy cases in the Commons at Nathan Hale. If you are ever near the building and you want to stop by, because what you saw was just a very small sample of, I had almost 100 projects turned in because I have some big classes this year. So yeah, that's what I brought for you tonight.
Thank you so much, April. And I think it's important for our greater community to see that the work is individualized at each school setting, and it depends on the learners that are there and the feedback that they get, how we adapt the work. And it gets more intense and more personal the older that our learners get, and the more they're ready to explore some parts of themselves and their place in the world so that they're ready to leave us and live life on their own terms. And with that, we're going to pass it over to Caitlin Windler to talk to us about finance.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Windler. Thanks for the intro. That was some pretty awesome work, so I appreciate being able to listen in on those conversations that are happening within our classrooms. I get to serve as our Director of Finance and Operations, and I'll talk through now a bit of our financial stability and efficiency building block. So within our strategic plan, this is one of our 4 building blocks. And it states our school district maintains fiscal stability while equitably aligning resources to support our mission and vision. So in the next few slides, will walk through some of the ways that we've met our goals within our strategic plan and how the improvement of our finances has impacted both our school community and our greater community. So this first slide that we're seeing here is regarding our credit rating. And a lot of people are aware that private organizations have a credit rating, but school districts do as well. And a credit rating is important because it is a third party giving the public a picture of the financial standing of an organization. And it's an impressive jump that we've made in the last few years. So just 3 years ago, we were sitting at the BA1 category, which you can see is in a category called junk bonds, which is nowhere that any organization wants to be. And we've improved our finances in so many ways and actually have changed credit raters. And so we have a score now with S&P. And we have moved up 7 levels and are now considered in the high grade at a AA minus. And the way that a credit rating agency goes about if issuing a credit rating is through basically a really long in-depth interview process. And so they go through an assortment of questions from long-term financial planning to the ways in which and the frequency in which we report our finances to the board, to planning around declining enrollment, and even the development that's happening within our community. So throw all those things in the mix and we have plans and we are thinking strategically and long-term with our finances. And so we were issued a credit score in the high grade, which puts us in some really good company. 58% of school districts in Wisconsin sit at the high grade or above, and 42% sit below the high grade. And a good credit rating is very important in many ways. And I'll talk through in the next couple slides how we were able to utilize that credit score increase to save dollars. So the first one is through refinancing of debt. So in October 2020, we were busy. We had our credit score improved, and then we did a debt refinancing. And the debt refinancing was on a debt that is outside of our revenue limit. So without getting really into the weeds, when there are funds outside of our revenue limit or debt outside of the revenue limit, that means that taxpayers pay additional amount beyond the revenue limit formula for that debt. And so when that debt is reduced through a lower interest rate, that means that taxpayers see a savings. So the mill rate reduces slightly, and that's what we saw in October of 2020. So taxpayers altogether are saving about $800,000, which is about 2% of our total levy. So small portion, but definitely a significant action that we were able to take for our taxpayers. The next way that our credit score impacted our finances is through a prepayment of debt, which is on debt that's inside the revenue limit. And so debt inside the revenue limit, when we have debt inside the limit, it's considered to be Fund 38, and I'll talk through later the various funds that we have within our budget. But ultimately, any debt that we have in Fund 38 reduces the amount of money that we have in our general operating budget. So if our revenue limit is so big, we have to first take off the portion for our debt payments, and then the remaining goes to our Fund 10 budget. So the smaller our Fund 38 debt is, the larger we have in our Fund 10 or our general fund budget. So when we were able to prepay debt, we saved an interest that we would have had to pay if we didn't prepay it, $186,000, which created both a savings and flexibility within our general operating budget, which essentially means money that goes right back into our classrooms. The next slide here is on our debt history. So debt happens when school districts borrow funds, and borrowing is very common and happens for a number of reasons. So we can see here the debt that we had that over the various years. And essentially this is considered our total indebtedness, which has a negative connotation, but it's a very normal process that school districts go through for a number of reasons. And you see 3 really high bars in the middle there. That was in 17-18 when we had a large debt that was incurred in order to meet our cash flow needs. And what happens in school districts is our revenue comes in a few very large chunks throughout the year. However, our expenses are very regular. We have payroll twice a month. Some months we have 3 payrolls. We pay our invoices every single month. So that imbalance of revenue and expenditures oftentimes equates to the need of a cash flow borrowing if your fund balance is not high enough, which we'll talk through in a little while. So we were able to pay off that large debt and now have a very much more manageable amount of debt, and actually will be paid off in the next few years. So this slide here is regarding our mill rate. And last year we saw a mill rate of $9.24. This year, $8.75. And this is the dollar amount that is applied to each $1,000 of equalized property value for residents in our school district. So in West Allis, West Milwaukee, and then the areas within Greenfield and New Berlin where students come to our schools. Our total tax levy in 2021 was just under $43 million. This slide here shows our incredible journey that we've made over the last few years and a really important goal for our school district to have met. So our board set a goal of a fund balance of 20% of our total expenditures. And I'll start by explaining what fund balance is not. It is not a budget surplus, and it is not entirely made up of cash. This relates exactly back to what I was just saying about how our revenue comes in a few chunks, few very large chunks throughout the year, and our expenditures are consistent throughout the year. So the goal is to have enough cash on hand, and cash is part of fund balance, enough cash so that when you get to that low point, and for us, our low point is in January before we get our very large state aid payment, to have enough cash on hand to avoid having to borrow, because borrowing always is associated with an additional interest cost. And again, interest, if you have a high credit score, interest is low. But back in the day, we had a lower credit score, so our interest was very high. So when we didn't have enough cash on hand, we were short-term borrowing for cash flow purposes and paying a lot of interest. Now that we've met this board's goal of 20% of our Fund 10, our general fund expenditures, we no longer have to do that short-term borrowing, which essentially means we just save those dollars that we would have paid on interest. We don't have to pay them. They can go right back into our classrooms. This is a breakdown of our budget. So I've talked a few times about Fund 10, you've heard me talk about Fund 38. So in school district accounting, the budget is broken into various funds. Fund 10 is our general fund, and Fund 27 is our special ed fund. So those are essentially the two funds where that is the cost of educating our students. And then we have various other funds such as debt payments, we have capital improvements, food service, community service, where we are supposed to and have to keep those dollars separate from our general operating funds. And so we'll take a closer look now at funds 10 and 27. So those buckets of dollars that are essentially the cost of educating our students. And we'll see that 70% of our budget is made up of salaries and benefits, which leads me to an important point about one of our other building blocks within our strategic plan, the employee engagement and culture building block. And so one of our goals within that building block is retaining and attracting our top talented teachers. And Jeff Thompson, our Director of Human Resources, is currently leading our committee to redesign our teacher compensation model that will be able to do just that. So this teacher salaries and benefits and all staff salary and benefits make up the largest portion of our budget, followed by purchase services, which is transportation, utilities, and professional development, among other things. Another goal within our financial stability and efficiency within our strategic plan is facility planning. So Dr. Lexman will walk us through the exciting work that we have going on with our facility planning.
So good. Thank you, everybody. And I just love the stories of from students and our teachers and the amazing work that's happening. And hopefully those of you that are hearing some of this story for the first time are understanding that what we're sharing is improving student achievement, and our improved finances is allowing us now to start to really look at kind of the next thing that we really need to focus on in terms of major improvement. And that really has to do with our facilities. And it's driven by a number of factors. It's driven first by declining enrollment, and it's not unusual in the state of Wisconsin. Most districts in the state are experiencing declining enrollment, and we'll share some graphs that tell that story a little bit more in detail. But this first bullet here is really important to understand why we're engaging in facility planning. In 1975, we served just over 12,000 students, right? And so we still have the same amount of schools and classrooms as we did in 1975, but now we serve 7,400 students. So there's an obvious kind of dynamic there that needs to be rethought, right? So we're serving fewer students in too many schools, and that adds cost. And the dollars that go into the facilities actually could be used in other places in the budget to support our continuing improvement in learning. And so, you know, there have been some renovations, additions over time, but very little has changed in the way our classrooms look, right? But a lot has changed, and hopefully you experience that in the way our learning looks, right? And so it is time for us to reconsider our schools, reconsider our spaces so that they better support the kind of learning that really matters for all kids and that fulfills that promise of equity through deeper learning. Now we have 23 buildings that are in urgent need of repair or potential replacement due to their advanced age, and the average age of our buildings is 75. Now, when I say need of either major repair or improvement, it doesn't mean that we haven't been maintaining the buildings. We have. Our buildings are actually in good shape for as old as they are, but there is a point where major systems in buildings have to be replaced for them to be efficient and safe. And by major systems, I mean plumbing, electrical, HVAC, all the fire systems that are in buildings, they have to be replaced over time just to maintain operations. And we're in that space right now where we have to look much more deeply at how we use our schools. And so that's largely driven, like I said, by enrollment. Here you can see our student enrollment. Third Friday is the official day in the state. So it's guided by the Department of Public Instruction that it's the official count of students. And you can see how this is, we had a peak in 14-15 and it has been coming down ever since then. But there's another dynamic to this enrollment overall that has to do with managing open enrollment in different ways. Now, when we say open enrollment in the state of Wisconsin, families can choose to enroll in any district in the state if they can get their students there, meaning transport them there. And those are called non-resident students, right? So we have a declining dynamic in the non-resident students that come in, meaning they come in from other districts mostly in our area. Now, some of this has been intentional by our school board. So in 14-15, you see there was a spike and it had been rising for 10 years quite a bit. And the way it was being managed was any student that wanted to come from another district was accepted. And what happened is it started to drive up cost because then there was no management of class sizes, no management of are there available seats in classrooms. We just kept adding kids and adding teachers and adding cost. And it's not a sustainable model. And so our board asked us to manage the other school districts in the state. Most of our students that open enroll out go either to Milwaukee Public Schools, and that's because they are in the unique specialty schools. So they go to the language immersion schools or they go to some of the art schools. We also know there's a dynamic of many families that start in MPS, they live in Milwaukee, they start their children in schools they like, and then they move to West Allis, but they leave their children in the schools they like. And so we understand that. And so part of the facility planning processes includes, are there other kind of educational models that we want to introduce that maybe our families would find attractive? The other dynamic in open enrolled out is that, you can stay on that one for a second, Deidre, it is the fact that when families leave us for the surrounding suburban districts, it's largely because of better facilities, right? So if you think about Wauwatosa schools that are going through major renovation because they passed a $250 million referendum, Greenfield schools, Greendale schools, New Berlin schools all have modern, updated, bright, interesting buildings that the communities are really proud of. And we think it's time for us to pursue that same vision for our buildings. So with that, we're doing some work and we hired a company to do projections around the dynamics of our school enrollment and the growth kind of in our communities. And you'll see that this right now goes out to 24-25. So you can see the declining enrollment over time, but it starts to stabilize. And our projection, the study that was done, actually goes out to the year 2035. So between now and 2035, we actually will grow a little bit, but we're going to stabilize right around the number of about 7,400, 7,500 students. And so we need to plan facilities that support that number of students and in ways that are cost effective for our community. So when we take a look at the number of schools we have, right, we started with, we have 11 elementary, 3 intermediate, and 4 high school. Well, it's a little hard to read on the slide, but you can see the age of the original construction of the building, right? So if you just look at it on the upper left corner, Franklin Elementary was built in 1924. That part of the building is 94 years old. So that means there are things that we can't do in that building, that a building that was built in 2020, air conditioning, obviously, right? Nobody was air conditioning buildings in 1924. And you think of the time we're coming through with COVID, the challenges that older buildings have presented us. And so it's really important for us to think carefully and strategically about how many buildings we need and where should they be and how do we make them more affordable for us. So that has launched our facility planning process. And the big goal here is to develop a long-range facility plan by engaging our community, our teachers, our parents, our students, other stakeholders in a large collaborative process. And together, this body, and it's 50 to 60 people, this body is charged with making recommendations to our school board regarding these two big questions, right? So how can schools be renovated or replaced or consolidated in ways that inspire and shape learning for the future, right? So that really inspire the kind of learning that we're engaged in right now and help us grow it. And then how can we do that in a way that is cost effective for our community? And so there's two big driving questions that this facility planning group is charged with answering and bringing recommendations forward to the board. So in terms of process, we call the group the Facility Advisor Community Team, or FACT, right? I just said there's over 60 members. There's parents, teachers, students, administrators. We have community members, we have city representatives, and we're working with some consultants as well. And like I said at the beginning of the presentation, this process is part of our strategic plan and the goals of both under the finance goals, but also in the communication and community relations goals, right? So those kind of overlap now in our strategic plan in this process. On the right, you see our consultants. We're working with Bray Architects and then CG Schmidt, which is a large construction company that works in a lot of school spaces. And what we've been doing is we've reviewed a number of reports that we contracted for. So the facility analysis, and that went building by building through detailed analysis of all the internal kind of infrastructure and all of the things that need to be improved to bring them up to modern standards. We did a building capacity study, which allowed us to really understand how many students can we currently serve if we start to consolidate buildings to be more efficient. And then the team also got some background on school finance, which was a lot more detailed than what Caitlin took us through this evening. It was several hours of school finance. And then we started to look at, are there different grade configurations that use our buildings better and, most importantly, are better for learning for kids? And so we're in the process now of starting to kind of narrow the focus of what recommendations might start to emerge. And as I talk through these, no decisions have been made yet, right? These are all kind of where we are in this process. But I think it's important for us to be really transparent about the process and all of the things that are kind of on the table to think about. And so one of the pieces that this team walked away from the last meeting with is a great deal of information about different grade configurations, and then their job is to rank order them, what they think makes the most sense for us. We don't have the results of that. It was assigned as homework. We don't have the results of that homework yet, but here's what was on the table. So what we currently have are, 4-year-old kindergarten through 5th grade buildings, 6th through 8th, and 9th through 12th. Now, when I say that, that's what we have now, but it's not what was here always. Grade configurations in school districts change over time. It changes with enrollment. It changes with kind of educational literature and research. So it depends. And there are very different grade configurations in school districts all across the state. So we thought it was important to look carefully at what might better suit us if we want to make any changes. So what about 4-year-old kindergarten to 4th grade and 5th graders move to the middle school? It's a more efficient use of our buildings. We have room to do that in the 3 larger intermediate schools, and then again, 9th through 12th. But another model that we started to talk about pretty deeply was K4 through 8th grade buildings. Now, it's a little more expensive to create these kind of buildings, but it's much better instructionally for kids. The academic literature around K4 through 8th grade is quite clear that student achievement is higher, students report less bullying, they're more connected to one another and to their teachers in their schools because they stay there for a longer period of time. And students engage in more co-curricular or extracurricular activities when they stay in K4 through 8th grade buildings. It's also, there's only one transition in the learning experience coming through from kindergarten through 12th grade. And it happens at a time when kids are a little more mature than at 4th grade or 5th grade. So they're a little more capable of kind of managing the kind of stress that comes with that kind of change and transition. Now, we also looked at kindergarten, 4-year-old kindergarten to 5th grade, and then 6th through 12th grades. Now, it also then says only one transition, but similar challenge at 5th grade. It involves probably 3 or more high schools in this kind of configuration. That gets to be quite a bit more expensive, right? Because one of the things the team keeps talking about is if we make any changes, we have to figure out a solution that creates equity, right? So it's not just equity in the kind of learning we're pursuing, it's equity to access to really quality school buildings. And so the idea, and it is one of the challenges we even have right now, the idea being that to have multiple high schools, they should have multiple opportunities to access all of the kind of CTE classrooms that come along with high school buildings. And I'll use the example of culinary program, right? So culinary programs are expensive to offer in high schools because to do it well, you need a commercial kitchen. And what we have at Central and Hale right now are the home ec rooms. And those are essentially the same home ec rooms that I took home ec in when I was in middle school in Michigan, I don't know, 40 some years ago, right? They look the same. Well, that's not the same kind of kitchen that a student walks into after some training and they go to work for a balustrade restaurant, right? They don't see a home ec room, they see a commercial kitchen, and we need to prepare them for that. Well, to offer that in 3 high schools or even 2 high schools is much more expensive, right? So one of the things the FACT team started to discuss is, should we have, going forward, 3 comprehensive high schools? Should we have 2 comprehensive high schools that are smaller? Or should we have 1 comprehensive high school that would be serving 1,800 to 2,000 kids? And there's advantages and disadvantages to each, right? 1 comprehensive high school provides more, ends up providing more advanced placement or advanced courses, right? Because you can offer more opportunities because you have more kids. You end up offering more extra or co-curriculars. Some of the disadvantages are you only have 1 athletic team, but there are models in our area where they have an A team and a B team to get more kids involved, or because you're not coordinating across multiple schools, you can start to have a really robust internal intramural athletic program. So there are ways to kind of address all of that in one larger comprehensive. And in our examples, we talked about 1 large comprehensive ends up being the most equitable way to create a really signature high school building for all kids, and it becomes the most cost-effective solution for us as well. So going forward, it really is the goal to bring recommendations to the board in June. Now, the challenge we've been having is we've been doing almost all of this, or we have been doing all of it on Zoom. And it's not ideal with 60 people in Zoom where you're trying to kind of hear all the various voices and perspectives and give feedback and input. So we may shift to some face-to-face or even longer meetings on a weekend, just so that we're really building consensus around our facility master plan. Now, if you're interested in more information about this, all of the information lives on our website. So Deidre's taking us right to that section on our website. There's a link right from the homepage. So everything I've been talking about lives here. This whole idea of, we're pursuing new learning in old spaces. And I think that's pretty clear that what you've heard about our new learning and what you're seeing in our old spaces. And this also maps out all of the meeting summaries, the press releases, the notes, the presentations, the studies, everything lives here. So you can really go deep if you want to learn more about this. In the end, what we're really trying to get to are the kinds of buildings our students really deserve, right? They're outdated, they're behind in terms of modern infrastructure, and the kind of work we're doing isn't supported in these buildings. So getting to what our kids really deserve and our communities will be proud of is what we hope the outcome ends up being in the end. Now, this will lead to a referendum question or referendum questions in the end, where there's no reasonable way or conceivable way for us to do this kind of work within budgets. And we're in the same place as every other community in the state. We're going to be asking our community to help support us, but we're hoping that the story of improved finances, improved achievement, and the need for improved buildings really starts to resonate. So what we want to do before we turn to questions is just leave this back kind of in the student space. So we're going to share just a quick video that kind of pulls us back to kind of the student experience, because in the end, it's really kind of their experience we're trying to support through all of this work. So Deidre, go ahead and play this quick video.
Okay. So what I love about this little video is not only this ending picture is really touching. It was covered by news media when we first brought some students back to class, and these little girls are friends outside of school, and they were working on a lesson and just spontaneously, touched hands through the plexiglass that, lives everywhere in schools these days. So it's just kind of a touching reminder of how important it is that we're together with kids in our schools. The other thing about the video I think is powerful is you didn't see kids in desks, right? And most of our classrooms are still kind of built for the idea of kids should sit in rows, and that's not the kind of education we're pursuing anymore. And that video starts to tell that story. So we appreciate everybody listening.